Welcome back to our workshop here. We're still producing lectures on the CR30, the 440C CR30 22 I/O point safety, programmable safety relay, if you want to call it a safety relay. We know it's actually basically a micro 830 with red plastic instead of gray plastic. But the electronics is not the same either, as you'll discover as we're discussing what you can do with the 22 I/O points. This discussion is mostly going to be for the space cadets or the bit heads that like to know all the nitty-gritty nuts and bolts. Most of what you're going to consider in this discussion, the details you don't have to know to do a proper design and implementation of the CR30. But it's all nice to know, and I would rather give you the choice to learn it or not learn it, consider it or not consider it, rather than just saying, oh, nobody wants to know this stuff. So let's jump in there and start looking at what this amazing piece of hardware can do for you. As we said, I titled this Section 8 because in the military, if you wanted to get out of the military, one way to do it would be through a Section 8, where they would declare you as mentally unfit. So that doesn't mean you're mentally unfit if you're a space cadet. That just means that you are occupying a realm that some other folks don't. So when I say this is for space cadets and bit heads, that just means it's a lot of the details. So let's jump in here. This is our list of I/O. You should recognize it by now. And there are 22 points. Now you see two items right in the middle between 11 and 12. That's because the terminals on this device, on one side you have 0 through 11, and on the other you have 24 volt DC terminals, 0 volt DC terminal, and then you have 12 through 21. And we're going to be considering input pulse testing for normally open. So if you look down through this list right here, quickly you'll see the first 11 or 12, 0 through 11, are safety inputs, but they cannot be configured for anything but what they are, and that's normally closed. So these safety inputs are only designed to work with normally closed safety devices. And then below that, you also have another group, 12 through 17, that can be normally closed safety inputs or normally open. So what we're talking about is testing 12 through 17. So let's just blank out the rest and consider just these half a dozen specialty I/O points that can be configured as outputs or inputs. And in our example here, we have terminals 12, 14, 15, and 17 have been configured for normally open. And you're probably wondering, well, how in the world do we do that? I mean, is there switches on this thing or what? This is done in software in Connected Components Workbench. You can actually do it from within RS Logic Studio 5000. However, you're really opening up an instance of Connected Components Workbench when you're doing it. So let's just say you do this in CCW, and you can do it through Ethernet or through USB plug and play. So in this particular example, we have configured 12, 14, 15, and 17 as normally open. You know, input pulse testing, normally open. To configure that, when you write your software, when you configure your logic, which we haven't shown you yet, but we will, you are actually selecting terminals to do specific things. So when you create your logic, it's at that point that you specify that I want to use 12 as a normally open input. And then I want to use 14. Then I want to use 15. I want to use 17. That means that you have used 13 and 16 for something else. So we're kind of combining 7 different scenarios here to give you the big picture. And these pulses that are used for testing, as you can see, are 640 microseconds in duration. That means they're just a little over half of a millisecond. So the way this works is the input terminal with a normally open contact should have 0 volts on it when the field contact is open. So we're considering when none of the inputs are on. So they should be at 0 volts. So if the contact is closed, it should have 24. Now, if it's closed and we apply a 640 microsecond pulse, it doesn't matter, because the programmable safety device knows that that contact is closed. It knows that that input is high, so it's not really looking for anything on that particular terminal. If we apply a pulse on each of these terminals one at a time, 500 milliseconds apart, that's half a second apart. Consider that you have roughly 2 of these pulses. Well, 2 of them would take up a little bit more than a millisecond. They're 500 milliseconds apart, and that pulse should not be detected on any of the other terminals. Notice that the pulses aren't all applied simultaneously. So if we apply a pulse on terminal 12 and we detect that 640 microsecond pulse on 13 through 17, well, actually we're not testing 13 and 16 because they've not been configured as a normally open input. So if we apply it to 12 and we see it show up on 14, 15, and 17, any of those, then we know we have a short. It waits 500 milliseconds. We're not testing 13, so we wait another 500 milliseconds, and then we test 14. We throw the pulse on there, and if it shows up on any of the other 3, then we know we have detected a short between 2 inputs in the field wiring. And so this repeats itself on a regular basis. Let's consider the opposite. This was normally open input pulse testing. And remember that the whole idea here is to come up with methods of outsmarting folks that are trying to outsmart the safety device. So if you've come up with some kind of clever way to jumper things out, it's not going to work, because within a minimum of a couple seconds, it will detect that something's not right, that you've jumpered something that's not supposed to be jumpered, and it's going to declare a fault. So input pulse testing for normally closed. So now when you look at list here, you've got 0 through 11, which are standard safety input normally closed, and then you've got 12 through 17, which also can be used as safety input normally closed. But we'll just focus on the specialty ones. This is where we're using it as a test pulses. And we have 3 groups, A, B, and C. What you're looking at here is the waveforms that would be on terminals 12 through 17 on a regular basis. So every 25 milliseconds, there will be a 1.7 millisecond pulse on 2 of these terminals. Notice that 12 and 15, that pulse is applied at the same instant. 13 and 16 at the same instant, etc. When we wire up 2-wire devices, 2-wire safety devices, which I always do 2-wire emergency stops, and they are normally closed, and they're wired up to inputs. So I want to pulse test them. I wire them to separate pulse test sources, and it has to be one channel source from an odd number and the other from an even number. So you see, if I had both of them hooked up to A, like if I hooked my e-stop up to 12 and 15, it wouldn't even let me do that. When you're in your software configuring, it won't even let you pick the wrong thing. So just to explain how this works, it puts out a continual train of pulses on these output terminals, 12 through 17. And when one pulse is finished, it does another, then it does another, then it repeats itself. It does 12 and 15, and then it does 13 and 16, then it does 14 and 17. 25 milliseconds later, it repeats that. The purpose of the test pulses is to detect any short circuits between 24 volts DC, 24 volts common, and shorts from one input signal to another input signal. As I've already explained, if you assign one input signal, remember you got 2 wires. So you've got your emergency stop buttons have 2 sets of contacts in each button, both normally closed. If an input signal is assigned to test pulse A, the other is assigned to B or C. Then a short circuit from one input to the other is detected. If they allowed you to assign both of them to A or to B or to C, then you wouldn't detect that you had that pulse showing up on the other. Because you have it connected to, say, e-stop to, let's say, A and B, then that test pulse is only going to appear on each of those one at a time. And you cannot select terminal 12 as one of the test pulse sources and terminal 15. You have to pick one odd number and one even. And CCW automatically prevents the user from selecting two of the same pulses when dual channel inputs and two test sources are selected. The software, you're going to find it's really friendly, and it just doesn't let you do certain things. Okay, safety systems that require a Category 4 structure and a CR30 rating must use pulse testing for the dual channel normally closed contacts. That's what we were just discussing. However, pulse testing for the lower categories, 3, 2, and 1, and the lower structures for SIL, 2 and 1, they still recommend it because there are a number of design decisions that you can make that increase the safety level without adding any additional cost. So if you've spent the funds, the money to get a CR30, you'd have to be crazy not to get every bit of safety out of it that you can. That was input pulse testing. Now let's consider output pulse testing. Now remember that the whole idea of pulse testing is to put a very short duration pulse in the microsecond range, very quick, on either inputs or outputs and see if it shows up on any other of the terminals. However, it's not going to do an output pulse test on something that's configured as an input. So when we look at our group there, output pulse testing will not show up on 0 through 11, but it will or could show up on 12 through 21. So let's just blank out the upper ones. And in this case, we're showing that we're doing a main transistor test. It's a 50 microsecond test, and the pulse appears simultaneously on all outputs. And then the main transistor is tested again 125 milliseconds later. So when you compare a 50 microsecond pulse to an interval of 125 milliseconds, that's quite a distance. Internally, the CR30 provides dual channel capability to turn off its safety outputs. Think of this as a main output transistor feeding individual output transistors. And the CR30 repeats this test process where it tests the main transistor twice and then sequentially tests each individual output twice. After a successful completion of the test, if it's unsuccessful, of course, it's going to fault. Then if it's successful, then it repeats that test sequence again. And the sequence occurs in which each output is individually tested twice. So when we're looking at terminal 12 there in our diagram, you see that every 250 milliseconds we're getting a test. If we were testing all 10 of these, it would take 10 times 500 milliseconds. So it'd take 5 seconds, basically, if you do a little quick math. The test pulse, again, is 500 microseconds. You're probably thinking, well, how do you do that if you're actually using the outputs? Consider this. Almost any device that you have, output type device, like relay coils, motor starters, if you turn the power off and back on for a 50 microsecond interval, the magnetic field of the coil cannot collapse. So if you have a coil energized and you turn off the power for 50 microseconds, that coil is going to pull right back in before it ever starts dropping out. In other words, that magnetic field will take more than 50 microseconds to collapse. The field device isn't even going to know that you were bumping the 24 volts down to 0 for a 50 microsecond pulse. And of course, it does it every quarter of a second, every 250 milliseconds. Output pulse testing, and remember that this was for the 12 through 17. Okay, now we're looking at all six of them. So, and this is a multi-purpose terminal. Is configured as an output with pulse testing. It's a different procedure. There's a 340 microsecond test pulse generated on the terminal. The length of the pulse, 340 microseconds. It could be as long as 700 microseconds, depending on the logic and the number of plug-in modules. Now, I'm not going to digress and explain why. And the whole idea of the pulse test is to detect short circuits between the one you tested and other terminals, between 24 volts and 0 volts. So when you look at the diagram there, you see every 1/2 of a second, there is a 340 microsecond, could be up to 700 microseconds. Let's say it is 700 microseconds. That's still less than 1 millisecond. All that you need to get out of this is that when you've configured your terminals as such, this is what you're getting. This is how it's performing the category level and SIL level of safety that you designed it for. Bottom line, folks, the more versatile a electronic device is, the more convoluted it is in a sense. So you need to design each of your safety circuits. And by that I mean, if you have an e-stop string, that's a safety circuit. If you have guard door switches, that's a safety circuit. If you have other kinds of safety switches and devices, those are each circuits. You need to design each of them to give you the maximum, the highest category, the highest SIL level. And then when you start putting them together, if you run out of outputs and inputs to do them all with the highest rating, then you start making compromises where you might use, you might not have tested outputs, or you might not have tested inputs for some of the less important. Now, the e-stop's the biggie, naturally. Guard door probably is a close second, and I think everything else kind of falls below that. Of course, there's light curtains too. So you need to design each of your safety circuits individually, and instead of putting down a terminal number for an input or an output, just write what kind of input and output you want. Then go and tally them all up, and if you come up with 8 pulse tested outputs, well, you're not going to be able to necessarily do that. So, design your safety circuits individually and then combine them. And go through the manual, the user's manual, and look at each individual feature that you're allowed. Once you've done this in the first project, you'll end up with a real good, solid understanding that you can then apply to all of your additional applications. Thank you for watching.